Okay, so if you're invested in like queer stories or BL, you've definitely felt this, right? You start a show, there are these two characters, and maybe there's a look or a touch that lasts just a bit too long, or just dialogue that, feels
But
charged.
yeah, that unmistakable tension.
Exactly, and you feel it, you connect, you start mapping it out in your head, maybe writing theories online. You think, okay, this time they're really going to do it, they'll commit.
You
You
invest.
totally invest.
Yeah.
And then, bam, the climax comes, or the finale, and the creators just pull back.
Yeah, they hide behind ambiguity, don't they?
They do. And that intimacy, that charge, it's just left hanging, unresolved, forever.
Mm. It's that specific kind of frustration, isn't it? Being handed this promise, this narrative possibility,
Mm.
that deep down you realize the creators probably never, ever intended to actually keep.
Right? They want the buzz, they want the fan theories, the engagement.
All the energy that queer excitement generates,
Yeah.
but not the actual representation itself. Not really.
And that's why we really need to talk about intent today.
Hmm.
We're going to try and draw a line between that, manipulative stuff, what people call queer baiting, and something else, something like a genuinely subtle BL story.
Right, the ones that use implication, nuance, maybe restraint.
Yeah.
But there's a clear intentionality behind it. It feels honest.
Exactly. So our mission today is kind of exploring that difference, the emotional difference, the artistic difference.
Between a story that deliberately holds back meaning, maybe out of fear or maybe for market reasons, and a story that genuinely shares meaning, even if it does it quietly, with, like, commitment.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start with the first one. Queerbaiting. What exactly is it, beyond just, a term frustrated fans use online?
Well, at its core, queerbaiting is really a tactic. It's a marketing device and a storytelling one, too. It's basically when creators deliberately hint at queer relationships or, that homoerotic tension,
Mm-hmm.
specifically to pull in the LGBTQ plus audience and sort of harness all that energy for engagement, views, clicks, discussion.
But crucial.
But crucially, they never actually plan to make it real in the story, in the canon. They lean hard on, like, suggestive looks, maybe some ambiguous dialogue, double meanings, things that always give them an out. Plausible deniability.
Okay, but here's the question critics always raise, right? Why isn't that just maybe a really slow burn romance? Or maybe just the audience reading too much into it, projecting?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's where the friction lies. But the difference isn't just about how slow it is, the pacing. It really comes down to commitment.
Commitment, okay.
Yeah. In a real slow burn, even if it's super restrained, that emotional intimacy, it's consistent. It builds, it moves forward, even if it's tiny steps towards something defined, an actual relationship. With queerbaiting, though, that tension, it's mostly serving an external purpose.
Meaning not character development, not the story itself.
Exactly. The payoff they're looking for isn't romantic resolution, it's metrics. Engagement. Getting people talking, generating fan art, going viral. That's the goal. And by keeping it ambiguous, but never really confirming anything, they keep the story sort of safe for mainstream audiences within that heteronormative comfort zone.
So they protect their commercial interests.
Right. While still kind of, cashing in on the interest and the hope of queer viewers.
Wow. When you put it like that, the emotional toll sounds huge. It feels really controlling.
It can be, yeah.
Like inviting people to hurt queer viewers to see themselves, only to keep reminding them, subtly or not so subtly, that their stories are maybe marginal or too much.
Too much for the main stage. It basically commodifies that desire, turns it into marketing fuel, while denying the actual humanity behind it.
Yeah.
And source material, the discussions around this, they often bring up those classic examples, right? Like Sherlock or Supernatural.
Oh, definitely those two.
Yeah, where you had seasons, years sometimes, of this meticulously crafted homoerotic tension, only for the ending to slam the door shut, usually with a big reinforcement of straight relationships.
Right, and that ambiguity was the whole mechanism, the bait itself.
Precisely.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting for me. Because then you watch other things, stories that also move quietly, that use implication. Maybe they don't have big declarations, but they leave you feeling seen, affirmed, not tricked.
Yes, and that's the other side of the coin we need to explore. The art of the whisper, you could call it. Genuinely subtle BL storytelling.
So how is that different? And define that contrast for us.
Okay, so subtle BL. It also often uses implication, nuance, maybe subtext. But the absolute key difference is intentionality. And honesty, really. The connection between the characters, while maybe restrained, feels real. It feels tangible within the story. It's consistent.
Consistent. That word keeps coming up.
It's crucial. The audience isn't left wondering if the relationship is real, if it exists. Maybe they're wondering how it's going to navigate the world or how it will fully express itself. But its existence isn't the question.
Okay, so if both can use restraint, how does a genuinely subtle story get that intimacy across? Without, like, constant kissing or I love yous, how do we know the whisper is real?
Well, you often have to look beyond just the dialogue. You look at the cinematic language,
Yeah.
context, the culture sometimes. Like if you look at, say, Japanese BL or Taiwanese BL sometimes, the restraint often comes from a place of realism,
Realism how?
like maybe reflecting actual social pressures or just the quiet internal way some relationships actually develop. It's not always driven by fear of backlash from the market. It's more about reflecting life or a character's specific journey.
Huh. That's fascinating. So the quietness, the space between the words or the characters, that's actually full of meaning if you learn how to read it.
Exactly. It's like poetry in small gestures. Think about works like the manga Duke Yuzi or maybe the anime Given. They're not loud stories.
Right. Can you give us an example? Like, what's a specific thing in, say, Given that shows that commitment you're talking about?
Okay, Given. Ritsuka and Mafuyu. Their connection, it's not built on big dramatic speeches, right? It's built through the music they share, obviously, but also through like tiny details,
Yeah.
physical things. Remember how Mafuyu carefully handles Ritsuka's guitar strings? That quiet care? Or the moments they just naturally share headphones, leaning into each other's space without thinking about it?
Yeah, those small moments.
The small, consistent moments. That's the narrative commitment showing through. It's in the everyday stuff, a shared laugh, figuring out how to exist in the same room, that nervous energy. It validates the emotional truth without needing neon signs.
Okay, yeah, that consistency versus that curated on-again, off-again ambiguity, that feels like the real divider.
It really is. The story itself confirms the relationship is real, even if the characters aren't shouting about it.
Yeah.
And we see that kind of powerful subtlety in dramas, too, like when it rains, it pours, maybe, or even something like Osan's Love. The intimacy is just woven into daily life, into the mundane.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what does this mean for us as viewers? We need a clearer framework, right? If both queerbaiting and subtle BL can use implication, how do we actually tell them apart? Draw that line in the sand.
Right. It really boils down to two main things we've touched on: intent and payoff. We could probably break it down into like 3 key separators. Think of it as a mental checklist.
Okay, give us the checklist.
All right. Number 1, intent. We talked about this. Queerbaiting relies heavily on plausible deniability. It hints, it suggests, but it always keeps that back door open to say, oh no, they're just really good friends or brothers in arms or whatever.
Right.
Subtle BL, on the other hand, uses its quietness, its nuance, specifically to honor an authentic connection that's actually in the story. There's no real room to deny it exists, only room to interpret its depth.
Okay, intent. Got it. Number 2.
Number 2, payoff. And this, like you said, is often the most crucial and sometimes the cruelest difference. Queerbaiting is almost defined by building up massive emotional tension and then just walking away. Poof. No resolution, no payoff, just a perpetual tease. Subtle BL, however, resolves the tension it builds. Now, that resolution might be quiet, it could be a whispered confession, or maybe just a profound act of acceptance between the characters, or achieving some kind of emotional closure together. The point is, the story respects you enough to finish the emotional arc it started.
Okay, intent, payoff. And the third separator, you mentioned function earlier.
Yes, number 3, function. What is the purpose of this ambiguity or subtlety within the narrative? For queerbaiting, the function is basically pandering. It's fan service designed to boost metrics, increase marketability. It's about the market.
Right.
For subtle BL, the function is simply storytelling. It's about respecting the characters, respecting the audience, and treating their connection as a real, integral part of the narrative, not just a gimmick.
Okay, that's a really clear framework. Intent, payoff, function. But here's a nuance alert I'm thinking of. I've definitely seen creators or studios kind of hide behind the idea of subtle artistry. You know, they defend not showing explicit queerness by saying it's subtle, it's sophisticated, when maybe, just maybe, they're actually just scared of backlash or losing sponsors.
Ah, yes. Cowardice disguised as artistry. That's a tricky one.
How do we spot that?
Well, I think you go back to those separators, especially intent and payoff. If the subtlety feels driven by fear, it's usually going to be inconsistent. Like those moments of intimacy might feel tacked on, disconnected from the main plot, like optional fan service you could edit out.
Okay.
And the resolution, the payoff, it'll likely be weak, retracted, or completely absent. Think about the supernatural finale situation again.
Yeah.
That felt like a last-minute backtrack fueled by fear.
Oh, absolutely.
But if the subtlety is genuinely exploring emotional realism or cultural nuances, then the intimacy will feel integrated, consistent, and the narrative will affirm it somehow by the end, even quietly.
That makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears slightly and talk about the audience, us. Because let's be real, we're getting much better at spotting this stuff, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. The collective audience sensitivity to authenticity is, like, through the roof now. We can smell a cynical marketing campaign a mile off. That little wink-wink, nudge-nudge from a writer in an interview, that just doesn't cut it anymore. We want it in the story.
And social media plays a huge role, right? Making that awareness global, instant, and loud. When a big show pulls a queer-baiting stunt now, the fan backlash is immediate. It's massive. And you got to think that changes the calculation for studios.
It definitely does. That's the power shifting right there. Queer baiting aims to control the narrative, control the attention for profit. But genuine BL, especially subtle BL that feels authentic, it kind of invites participation.
How do you mean?
Well, think about BL fandoms. They don't just consume these stories passively. They actively expand on them. They write fanfic, exploring the nuances. They translate things. They write these incredibly insightful essays and analyses. They build layers of meaning, sometimes filling gaps the original media left, sometimes celebrating what was there.
Yeah, that's true.
So calling out queerbaiting isn't just complaining. It's like an act of demanding that narrative commitment. It's pushing back against being manipulated.
We're essentially forcing creators to choose then. Are you going to treat queerness like a disposable gimmick, something to dangle for clicks?
Or are you going to treat it as a real lived experience that deserves a truthful portrayal, whatever form that takes?
Right. So, ethical storytelling here. It boils down to being transparent about your intent, doesn't it?
Pretty much. It doesn't mean every single story has to be overtly political or loud, but it has to be honest. If your story isn't actually a queer romance, fine. Just don't market or frame it like it is.
And if it is, even a quiet one.
Then trust your audience, trust your story. Let that connection breathe authentically.
And we are seeing more and more examples where that kind of deep visibility and like beautiful subtlety really do exist together. It's possible.
Oh, definitely. There's been a real blossoming of works that nail this balance lately. You look at something like Korea's The Eighth Sense, the way it uses atmosphere, that quiet filming style, to capture those really nuanced, almost unspoken feelings of first love at university. It's stunning.
I love that one.
Or Japan's My Beautiful Man. The emotional core, the commitment between the leads is undeniable. It's intense, but their actual relationship dynamic, the power balance, it's intentionally subtle, complex, not easily defined, and that's the point.
Yeah, and Taiwan keeps giving us gems too, like plus and minus.
Exactly. All of these series, they kind of prove that love stories don't need constant shouting from the rooftops to feel revolutionary or real. Sometimes it's the quiet truth of them just existing together. Those small, honest moments of shared life, that's what cuts through the noise.
It really is about that narrative commitment, isn't it? That's the heart of it.
So if we boil it all down, the core difference we've kind of circled around today, queerbaiting is fundamentally about withholding meaning, right? Drawing you in, using your hope, but ultimately shutting you out. Whereas BL, whether it's subtle or explicit, if it's done honestly, is about sharing meaning. It's about sincerity.
Yeah. Representation isn't just about seeing faces like yours on screen. It's about having those experiences, those relationships seen honestly, affirmed by the narrative itself, unambiguously. And as audiences get smarter, more vocal, more connected, I think the days of just dangling these invisible promises only to snatch them back, those days are numbered, hopefully.
Which kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on, doesn't it? Looking
Right.
forward, what new kinds of stories, what new depths of emotional realism could we actually get when creators finally feel they can trust us? Trust the audience enough to genuinely whisper the truth of a queer relationship instead of always feeling like they have to shout it, or worse, stay silent out of fear.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. See you in the next one.